Death and devastating damage, but the worst of Hurricane Laura missed Texas. Why the close call puts new pressure on lawmakers to pay for a plan to protect Texans from the next big storm. Some colleges across the country and here in Texas are struggling financially, especially as the fall semester begins amid the pandemic.
And there are things that we've learned from this period of time that will really change the way we talk to students well beyond the pandemic.
We found some Texas schools trying creative ways to attract and retain students. But is it enough to help them avoid a financial crisis?
Nursing home residents are just always kind of skipped over, ignored.
A call to action from families with loved ones in nursing homes, what they're doing to make sure they have a voice on Election Day. Hello, and thank you for joining us for State of Texas. I'm Josh Hinkle, and today I'm joining you once again from my home studio as our crew continues to social distance amid the coronavirus pandemic. Governor Greg Abbott surveyed the damage caused by Hurricane Laura from a Coast Guard plane this week. The storm hit southeast Texas, but the worst of the storm landed in Louisiana. The governor said he was grateful that the Category 4 storm did not deliver more damage. Texas may have dodged a bullet this time, but what's protecting our coast the next time a storm hits? Hurricane Laura added to the growing pressure facing lawmakers and government engineers to finally make progress on what's known as the Ike Dike or the coastal spine. Our Wes Rappaport looks closer at this sophisticated storm surge barrier decades in the making.
You have to have the coastal spine, quite frankly, and we need it yesterday.
Houston Mayor Sylvester Turner was still a state representative when Hurricane Ike pummeled the Texas coast in 2008. The storm caused $38 billion in damage and fueled an outcry for a comprehensive storm surge barrier to protect the Texas coastline. Enter scientists at Texas A&M. They came up with a plan for what would become the Ike Dike, or coastal spine, a plan that garnered quick support from then-Governor Rick Perry. But now, almost 12 years later, still no barrier, not even a finalized plan.
And it certainly is very important, but it's unfortunately a very complex process for a very sophisticated storm surge barrier.
At the governor's press conference Thursday, Texas Senator John Cornyn said the Army Corps of Engineers won't be releasing a finalized proposal until next year, and then it has to get congressional support. The Ike Dike is a complex project, 70 miles of seawalls, gates, and barriers along coastline, and requires careful consideration of the effects on the environment and surrounding communities. But Republican Representative Chip Roy says the real issue comes down to priorities. Financial priorities.
Go back and look at the footage of the historic pictures of building the wall there in Galveston after the disastrous hurricane in the early part of the 20th century. There's no limit to what we can do if we need to do it. It's a matter of resources and putting our mind to what we need to do. Whenever you're talking about infrastructure, it's about prioritization, and we don't ever do it.
Mayor Turner says Hurricane Laura, his fifth since he took office 5 years ago, proves the time to get it done is now.
That coastal spine is desperately needed.
Wes Rappaport joins us now. He is currently in one of the hotels that he and crews have been staying in all week as they've been surveying this damage and going from town to town, inspecting exactly what's happening on the ground. Now, Wes, I understand this coastal spine could cost anywhere up to $30 billion. Would all that money come from the federal government?
Josh, that's a great question, and it's one of the unanswered questions kind of at this point. You know, this project won't happen without at least some federal funding, right? So a report from the Army Corps of Engineers found this project would require cost sharing between the federal government and state governments, even local governments perhaps chipping in at some point. Money certainly going to be hard to find at this point with the pandemic going on and taking a toll on this economy.
You and our crews have been out surveying the damage, and you also went along with the governor as he took a look at everything that was happening during a flight. What was really what you took away from that?
Yeah, I traveled with the governor as he surveyed the damage by plane with the Coast Guard and emergency management officials, other elected leaders. One interesting takeaway that he commented as we were getting off the plane was that he expected there to be more damage over the Beaumont, Port Arthur, and Orange areas. And that's not to say that there wasn't damage, because there certainly was, but he was commenting how there wasn't as much physical damage that he saw out the window that he was expecting.
You know, we're still a few months away from the legislative session, and of course we have to get through the election also to see who's going to be joining us at the state capitol as we're covering everything that they're hammering out. But are you getting any indication from the current batch of state lawmakers that there will be more talk about what to do if a future storm comes? How are we going to handle that, and how are we going to fund it?
Well, that's definitely going to be a serious conversation that's going to need to be had here as we head into the next legislative session. You know, we talked so much in the last session about Hurricane Harvey because that was the first time lawmakers had met since that big storm. And so moving forward, Hurricane Laura definitely going to be on the conversation, but we'll have to see what kind of priority that has as we move forward, because again, talking about a pandemic that we need to address, talking about economic challenges that we need to address, talking about redistricting that we'll need to address. So we'll have to see where Hurricane Laura and where some of these flood prevention and storm preparation efforts will land in that conversation.
Thanks, Wes. In the hours before Hurricane Laura made landfall, our investigative team was out on the hunt for price gougers. Investigator Jody Barr traveled 500 miles checking gas prices along the prime paths for people fleeing the storm.
We headed out of Austin toward Ennis, a small town turned evacuation shelter outside Dallas, looking for price gougers. We checked two main evacuation routes, Interstate 45 between Houston and Dallas and Highway 290 between Houston and Austin. We went gas station to gas station, documenting posted prices along the evacuation routes. The lowest price we found anywhere, $1.60 at this Buc-ee's along Highway 290 near Houston. The highest, this Phillips 66 station off I-45 at Huntsville at $2.19 a gallon. Both, though, not far off the $1.90 per gallon average in Texas now.
Our job is to protect consumers from price gouging during a disaster for those things that are considered essential.
Texas Attorney General Ken Paxton told us state investigators are still watching for price gougers too. The AG says it received 33 reports alleging price gouging so far. 12 complaints of gas pricing, 9 on hotel pricing, another 6 involving grocery and convenience stores, 5 complaints on hardware stores, and 1 other labeled miscellaneous.
I think it's an important message for businesses to know, and I think they just need to be fair in how they deal with consumers and make sure that they're treating their own consumers with dignity and respect and fairness on pricing.
Well, from the evidence we collected along those evacuation routes between Austin, Dallas, and Houston, it appears those gas stations, at least, were following the law. For the state of Texas, I'm Jody Barr.
Our investigative team did the same thing back in 2017 when Hurricane Harvey hit Texas. During Harvey, the AG's office fielded more than 3,300 complaints along the evacuation routes back then. Our team caught a hotel near Corpus Christi, nearly tripling room prices there. That hotel lost its Best Western franchise, and the AG's office sued the hotel owners. Our Jody Barr also found an Austin gas station charging $3.49 a gallon for gas, almost $1 more than the average at the time. Some stations were caught selling gas at $10 a gallon. Fines for price gouging range anywhere from $20,000 for each offense to $250,000 if the victim is 65 years or older.
We need to remind ourselves what heroism really is.
A Texan gets a moment in the spotlight at the Republican convention, his message and the challenge he faces in November.
I'm not paying any rent costs or anything like that. I'm not paying $2,000 to $3,000 a class. I'm paying $250, which is way more affordable.
Financial uncertainty looms for many colleges across the nation right now, including some in Texas. And even before the pandemic, we discovered some schools were already in crisis. We investigate why some colleges are losing money.